Hey, y'all, and welcome to In Good Company with AT. I'm your host, Alexandria, and with me today, I'm so excited. I have my sister and best friend, Ariel, to talk about protecting your digital footprint. Before we get into who you are, what all of this means, I know that, like me, you're an avid reader. So, what are you currently reading, Ariel?
A series. The first book was The Perfect Marriage, and I just finished that one, which was pretty good. So I had to finish out the series. So working on Perfect Divorce.
I did read The Perfect Marriage, so I'm excited to hear what you think about The Perfect Divorce to see if it's something I need to put on my reading list. For our audience members, Ariel and I often are going back and forth about book recommendations. So, Ariel, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so like Alexandria said, I'm Ariel Turnley, and outside of being her sister, I am a digital forensic technician for a police department in South Florida, and I actually really enjoy my job.
What drew you to this line of work? Because when I think about like the typical careers that you think about growing up, I would have never thought about this. So, what drew you to this?
And it's funny because I never thought about it either. Growing up, you always think doctor, teacher, lawyer. Those are like the big three of careers. So in my mind, I was like, I want to be a doctor and I wanted to be a general surgeon. So that's what I went to school for. Quickly, I realized that that was not the path for me, and I took a computer science class, which I absolutely love. So I changed my major to computer science. But what really got me into digital forensics was watching Criminal Minds with my roommate. And there was a character named Garcia who was like the tech genius. And she wasn't in the field doing like dealing with all the crime scenes or like in all of the craziness of it. She was behind the scenes getting them information. And I thought that was so cool. And that was what I wanted to do. So I started researching and I found digital forensics. So I knew immediately that I was going to go to grad school for digital forensics. And that's what I ended up doing. And I enjoy that even though it's not front of the line work of keeping people safe and that people don't always see my face, I'm still doing my job in the background to help those who everyone sees.
That's a really good segue to my next question. When people hear digital forensics, what is something that you wish they understood about your job?
I think a lot of the times when I first say digital forensics, the only part of that that people hear is forensics. So they think I do
Mhm.
typical physical forensics, which in the same vein as any physical forensics, I still have to follow the scientific method. And there's a methodology to what I do to gather the evidence that I do. But it's only with digital devices. So I deal mostly with phones, computers, video, anything that has any type of data on it, that's what I'm dealing with.
That's really helpful to clarify because I hear the term, and to your point, I think of the forensic side, but not always understanding what all of that means. How has your perspective on technology changed since you started in your field?
It has changed in ways that, in a sense, I see how much harm can be done with technology, but also how it can make life so convenient. I see all of the bad things, but then I get to see all of the good things. So I see
Nice.
like how things can make things easier, but then how that can also be used to exploit people. So I see that there's kind of a balance that you have to find with technology. So, and it's always evolving. So you're always learning new things about technology.
Think that can be like almost the scary part about it. It's like once you get it down, it's like it's continuing to change.
Yes.
So, we're going to talk about today digital footprint. When we say digital footprint, what all does that include?
So, a digital footprint is a collection of information created by your activities online and also through possibly connected devices. So, some of the information is intentionally shared, but some of it is collected automatically. So, you don't necessarily realize what's being collected. So, there's kind of two different types. There's like the active footprint, which you, as it sounds, those are the things that you intentionally do: the social media posts, the comments, the videos that you post, any reviews that you make, or emails that you send, or even online purchases. Then there's like the passive footprint, and that's going to be things like your location history, browser history, device identifiers, cookies, things like that. So People usually think that their digital footprint is just what they post, but in reality, it's a lot of information generated by different ideas and different decisions that you make along the way and using technology.
So, can you talk to me a little bit about what cookies are? Because I always see that when I'm logging onto, I was going to say restaurants. I'm clearly thinking of food on websites. Can you talk to us about what those cookies are?
Yeah, so cookies are basically information. They're like cookie crumbs. So they track little things that you do on websites, and it typically is used to help advertising for whatever website you're on, or it's to help them. A good idea of it is some websites will use it to help them understand if you're making a purchase online, where you stopped in that purchase process, to understand why you stopped and how to make it better, so then maybe more people will purchase the product. So things like that to help track along the way. Now it can be used and sold for other things, but that's kind of the main purpose of cookies.
Thank you. That's so helpful. So now when I look online, I won't be thinking of a bakery. I'll understand what that means and not just going and clicking accept, right? Like
Mhm.
understanding what it's all about. Is it fair to say that people have a larger digital footprint than they generally think?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think that, like we talked about, people think that it is simply the things that you post, the things that you intentionally do. But like I said, it's the different decisions that you make along the way that can create some of your digital footprint. So you have to think about even accounts that you had that maybe you've forgotten that you had. You don't even remember the passcode for
Mm,
them. Things that you've put in old forums or online games, shopping sites, rewards programs, school portals. There can even be cloud backups. So there's things that you've even granted permissions to for different applications, and maybe you haven't read the privacy policy. So there's certain things that maybe you're giving access to that you don't even realize. So it's just like a lot of different decisions that you've made over, even over the years, that create your digital footprint.
that is super helpful. Without sharing anything confidential, what's a situation that you've seen that really has stuck with you when you've been out in the field or in the office?
It's funny, actually, the one thing that comes to mind first is something that happened even before I started this job. When I was in grad school, I was interning for a pretty big company, and I was doing penetration testing, which is basically there's two different sides to it. It's the proactive side and the reactive side. So before anything happens, any type of breach, they want to make sure that they have all of the steps in place to make sure that they can pretty much prevent a breach from happening. Then the reactive side is going to be, if a breach occurs, they can figure out what happened, how to fix it, and do it immediately so they don't have any downtime with their systems.
Okay.
So we were doing more of the proactive side. And one of their clients, what they do is social engineering. So they put things in place to make sure that your team and your employees are not giving away vital information so that you can have a
Got it.
breach. So with social engineering, what happens is people find information about you online. They get all of this information to make you trust them so then they can
Mm,
then get into your systems. So with this, what happened was they have a client who was like, you can do this social engineering experiment with us and our team because we feel like people aren't really listening. So just like you get phishing emails from companies to make sure that you're not clicking on things, they did a vishing, which is voice phishing, so phone calls. So what we had to do was find information about people, and we had to call them and we had to try to get certain information from them. One team was super successful, and they were able to find one of the interns' LinkedIn to act like the intern and try to get information about the company. And at one point, the person was like, I just need you to verify that you're this person. So what is your phone number? And it turned out that that intern had their resume on their LinkedIn with their phone number. So they were able to verify that they were that person because they had their resume on LinkedIn. So it was stuff like that. And then we also made spoof sites for phishing emails that looked very real. So you also have to think about making sure you're not clicking on any types of links in emails because they can look just like actual sites that you use and they're actually not, and they're just storing your information.
I'm stressed.
I know I laid a lot on you with that, but that really opened my
So
eyes to a lot of things.
so based on that particular example, what would you say you learned from that exercise?
So I learned obviously you can't put a lot online. I went to LinkedIn and immediately took my resume down because there's
Listen,
so much.
writes notes,
Right, exactly. There's so much
take
on
it off.
LinkedIn, especially because you're trying to get jobs. You need so much information on LinkedIn, but that a lot of that stuff should remain private unless someone asks you for your resume. Maybe wait to put it on your LinkedIn. Maybe send that individually because there's so much information that you put in your resume alone that can be
Right.
used. And also, obviously, like I said, when I'm looking at emails, I'll go directly to the site before I click on a link in an email because there's so much that you have to look at to make sure that you're going to the correct site. And it may look exactly like the site, but it might have minor differences. So, like, it might have a period in a place that's not supposed to be there, or an extra letter, or spelled slightly differently. So, if you're not really paying attention, you'll miss it and think that it's the actual site when in reality it's not. And you're just giving away your username and password for your bank account or something.
This is all super helpful because I think day to day we don't think about these things. We're just moving through life. But I think for me, one thing I definitely think about and I'm going to write down is to take my resume off of LinkedIn or at least take some of those identifiers off of that resume that is on LinkedIn. Is there anything
So
else that based on what you've learned that you refuse to do online?
So I think a lot of people hear this too, but I don't really share my real time location, especially on social media. And I don't reveal travel plans before I go on a trip. So if I want to share anything, it's going to be after I come back from the trip. It's going to be after I come back from the trip because I don't want people to know that I'm not in my house and know where
Yeah.
I'm going. So I try to avoid those. This is really tedious and really annoying, but I try not to reuse passcodes because if it gets compromised in one data breach, then they can try to reuse that everywhere because they know that people reuse passwords. So I don't want any of my accounts to become compromised. So I try not to reuse passwords. Something else that I think is kind of important is when you're doing security questions online, when you're creating an account or something, I try not to choose questions that are too revealing. So I don't want to reveal things about my family members, about where I live. So I might do something that's a little less personal so that I don't
Okay.
have to reveal such important information because some of that stuff gets saved and I don't want someone to be able to find that. And those are some of the things that I really do try to avoid when I'm creating accounts or even on social media.
Thank you. This is super helpful. So, we are going to do a digital footprint myth or fiction, and it'll be just like a lightning round of things. So,
Okay.
deleting a post means it's gone forever.
So
Myth or fact?
it's mostly a myth. So it can disappear from your profile and that kind of keeps it out of the public eye, but it can still exist. There can be backups of this that social media sites might hold on to. Just, they typically will have a backup of a profile or things like that. People can take screenshots of things. People may have reposted it. So it might still exist in someone else's profile and there may be cached versions of it or things that have been saved to make it easier to bring up a page. So typically what cache is especially if a site has a lot of pictures or a lot of content, it'll save some of that content as snapshots so that it will be
Okay.
easier when it's time to bring it back up. So it might still be saved as a cached version. So some social media sites may keep data for a certain period of time. And also, you have data brokers who will sell data in order to help with advertising, but they may obscure the information but not delete it. So that's important to keep in mind as well. And the other thing is, even if you do delete something, sometimes the browser may take a couple of weeks to kind of wipe
Ooh,
it
okay.
because what it does is it scrapes the internet for information and it might take a while for it to be back up to date. And they're always scraping for new information. So,
So basically, It could mean it's deleted forever, but don't know for sure, so be careful.
Exactly.
The next
Exactly.
one is, are private accounts truly private?
Also, mostly private accounts can reduce your exposure, but they don't prevent, again, screenshots. They don't prevent
Okay.
your friends sharing information or the platform's access to your information. If your account was ever compromised, this can also be a huge issue in keeping your account private. And also there's metadata collection. So if you don't know what metadata is, that's the
Yeah.
what we call is the data about your data. So location
Okay.
information, it could be the date and time of when a picture was taken. So all of that information can still be stored someplace. And again, search engines might take some time to catch up to the fact that now your account is private and not sharing as much information. And it might take a minute for previously searched information to be wiped.
That's good to know. I never thought about that there might be a lag on that. So, companies don't really use your data in meaningful ways, myth or fact?
Definitely a myth. So we talked about cookies. Your data really does help companies with personalized ads for you, recommending content for you, measuring the engagement of different items on a site, and to improve their products, improve their processes, to understand what's working, what's not working, and how to fix it. It can predict purchasing behavior, and detect fraud and build customer profiles. So all of these things are maintained in cookies, but not every company will sell your data outright.
Okay.
So don't be afraid of every single company, but do be aware of what you're saying yes to when you're allowing these cookies to be collected. So a lot of companies will use it internally for predictions and personalized services, but just make sure you're looking over the cookie agreement that you're accepting.
So, don't just press accept so it'll move out the way, basically.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you for indulging me in a little round of myth or fact. So, next, if someone wanted to clean up their digital footprint online, where would you tell them to start?
I would say ask yourself a couple of questions. What information am I sharing? What permissions have I granted? And what accounts do I no longer use? I would say
Okay.
clean up there first. Clean up accounts that you don't use. If you know what the password is, try to get in there, delete the account. If there's a way to get in there and use forgot your password to then delete it, go ahead and do that. Get rid of some of that information. So then it's not necessarily in the public eye anymore. Really think about what information you're giving people access to. So when you post, think about the things that you're posting. What kind of information are
Mm,
you sharing? Something that might seem really vague or unintentional, it can provide a lot of information. And then it's tedious, but read through some of the agreements that you're accepting. I know sometimes you're just like, okay, I'm just trying to get on this site so I can purchase something, except
it's so long.
exactly. But kind of browse through it, peruse it, see what they're
Yeah.
saying, especially when you get to privacy information. Kind of look through it and see what kind of information are you accepting? Because I think a lot of people, for example, don't even realize some of the things that Instagram will collect. So think about some of those things when you're reading through the privacy. There are also some ways that you can remove some data from
Okay.
the internet. A lot of those are paid sites that will help you remove some of your information from like search engines and browsers. So take a look into some of those. So then you can kind of remove some of that information that is about online about you.
It sounds like you're giving us a little homework to do, making sure that we're looking through those agreements, and then just looking at the things that we're sharing and or accounts that we're no longer using. So thank you for that. What settings or habits would you say are non-negotiables for you now?
I would say one of them we already talked about. I typically, when they ask me about cookies, I reject them all, or I only accept the essential or required ones
Okay.
because I don't want the advertisements that are specifically geared towards me. I don't need all of that information, and some of them I don't even know what you're collecting. So I'm like, I don't want that
Right.
information out there. Again, choosing unique passwords. And for me, I use a password manager. So then I don't have to remember all of those
Remember.
passwords. And some of them also provide you with unique passwords. So you don't have to
Yeah, I
come
was
up
gonna
with them
ask about
yourself.
that. I was gonna ask if you recommend doing that? Because I know sometimes on my iPhone, it'll say it will create a unique password, one that I will never remember. So I was going to ask, is it something
Yes.
that you recommend us doing?
I would definitely choose a reputable password manager. Some of them require even more than the one on the iPhone and might be a little bit more secure. But a
Okay.
password manager is great because, of course, you're not going to remember all of these passwords. So definitely consider a password manager so then you can have those unique passwords, but not have to remember them all the time. Another thing on that topic would be multi factor authentication on a
I was
lot of
going to
your
ask about that.
accounts. And if you don't know what multi factor authentication is, it's using two different methods in order to authenticate into your account. Two or more. So typically you'll have your password, but the other thing is a lot of the time something that you not just something that you know, your password, but something that you have. So that's going to be maybe a PIN that an app provides you or having the app to be able to accept it. So having something that without you having that information, you can't even get into my account. So that's really important as well. I think another thing that a lot of people don't really like is software updates, especially when it comes to iPhones. But I think it's really important because they come up with a lot of patches that if you don't have the update, you're still open to any exploitation that's out there. So these are
Okay.
ways that people cannot get your information or get into your data because now Apple or whatever system you're using has patched that hole basically. So software updates can be annoying, but there's also a really good side to it. So that's again the thing about technology
That's
being
really good to know.
convenient, but yeah, technology being convenient, but also sometimes it can be a little frustrating. So those are some really good things that I think about. Privacy isn't really about hiding who you are and what you're doing, but it's about deciding who gets access to that information. So think about those things.
That is super helpful. I'm one of those people that can want to rebel against the system and not update my phone, my computer, and all the things. So I'll be way more apt to update my software in the future. I want to go back to multi factor authentication. I know some of the apps I use to sign in, or like even the banks sometimes have that. Do you foresee in the future that it'll be more than a two-step process as technology grows?
Think so. Or they'll find different ways to make it more secure. I think a lot of places do are starting to get on the train of multi-factor, not just two-factor authentication, because I think before in years past that was kind of the buzzword two-factor authentication or the buzz phrase. But now it's
Yeah.
become multi-factor authentication. So I think people are starting to use more than just two ways to get into an account and verify that you are the person who has access to this
Yeah.
account or should have access to this account. So I think a lot of places are going to start doing that. But
So
then I
I'm
also
already
think,
behind.
I know, but then I think a lot of places are realizing how tedious it is to do multi factor authentication and how quickly people want access to their stuff. So some people may just stay at two factor authentication and just find better ways to secure their data.
Thank you. That's super helpful. So, for those of you who have been tuned into Sticks and Stones Indeed Broke My Bones, the blog, you know that I usually get very personal on there. So, now for a personal question. Have you ever wanted to intervene in a way that I post online?
Okay, not because I wanna control what you share, but because sometimes we don't really realize how harmless looking posts can reveal so much about our life and our location and our routines and information that it can be useful years later. So while the way people post online often makes me nervous, I think sharing can cause people to exploit other people. But I think it's also a good way to connect with people online. And
Mhm.
so I think that's why a lot of people do post a little bit deeper and a little bit more about themselves to connect with people online. So I think it's about finding that balance where you're
Yeah.
finding a way to connect with people, but also not revealing too much about who you are, where you live, the routines that you have, because those can be exploited, unfortunately.
Thank you. I will be more mindful of those things. I don't want anybody to come and steal me or steal my
And I
identity.
think, yeah, and I think it's just about being cognizant. of where and what you post, but also not being afraid to connect with people. So just
Yeah.
be aware of what's happening and what you're doing, but don't be afraid.
Thank you. So, as we close out, I want to ask you two final questions. The first
Okay.
is, what is one thing that you're personally still learning about this topic?
Think, like I talked about before, technology is always evolving. So, always staying up to date on what the newest exploits are and how people are using data, how people are getting access to data, because I think it's constantly evolving. People are always finding loopholes. Even when there's a new update, people are going to try to find the loophole. And then how is that being
Yeah.
patched? So, just keeping up to date with one, the nefarious side of things, but keeping up with also the good side of things and how that's being fixed.
So, is there a way for us to keep up with this information? Because everyone doesn't have an Ariel in their life, right? So, how do we keep up with what's going on in technology? How to keep ourselves safe? Because to your point, technology is always changing and evolving.
There's tech news, so you can always look at what's new in technology, what's been going on. Some, even if there's big exploits, you might be able to see some of those big exploits that are
Okay.
going on and some of the patches. I'd also encourage you, when you do updates on any type of system that you have, read through some of the patches that they've created, some of the bugs that they fixed, and then you can do a little bit more research into how they came upon these bugs if they provide that information and how they're fixing them.
Thank you. That's helpful. So, again, I think we have like a lot of homework from this to make sure that we're creating safe passwords, looking at what we're
Mhm.
sharing online, and being careful about locations and things of that nature. Setting up that multi factor authentication that is now going from two and beyond. So, and to continue to stay up what is going on in tech news. So thank you, Ariel. One more question for you. This is In Good Company, the podcast. Who has been good company for you throughout your life?
I would definitely say, obviously, you and mommy. I think you guys have always pushed me to be even better than I think I can be and to have confidence no matter what. And I think to be compassionate and empathetic with everyone that I meet. I would also say my Spellman sisters and my Spellman family, who even taught me even more confidence so that when I walk into a room, I know I deserve to be there, even when the room doesn't look like me, defying odds, and knowing that I am smart enough to be in every room, even if no one thinks that I am. If you don't know why I'm there, you'll find out soon enough. So I think all of those people have made me who I am and many more, but those are the first that came to my mind.
And thank you. And obviously, you are good company for me. And that's why I had you here today. So thank you so much, Ariel, for sharing more about protecting your digital footprint. I'm always amazed by the work that you do out in the field. So thank you for your service to our community. And thank you, everyone, today for In Good Company. Yes. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.